In this video, we are going to learn how to boil out the Henny Penny style chicken stoves. If your store does not have this model of stoves, please refer to the 2018 boil out training video. Let's begin. In order to boil out the stoves, you are going to need the following equipment: heat retardant gloves, a shootout hose, green scour or scrub brush, boil out compound, a clean towel, and a water hose. Now, before boiling out the stoves or fryers, they must have been filtered first. For the purposes of this training video, the stoves and fryers have already been filtered. If you need a refresher on how to filter, please ask your manager for access to view that separate training video. First, turn off your stove. Make sure your filter hose is connected to both the shootout pipe and the stove connection. Note, this is very important. The hose must be secure on both ends before turning the pump on. Turn the drain lever on the stove to allow the shortening to drain into the pan, and then press the pump switch. Once the switch has been pressed, the pump will pull the shortening from the pan and push it through the hose, into the shootout pipe, and outside to the grease recycling bin. Once the shortening has been shot out completely, we can begin adding water to the stove. Now, let's turn off the pump, close the drain lever, disconnect the shootout hose, and then fill up the stove with water to the fill line. Once the water is to the proper line, add 1 packet of boil out compound and turn the stove on. Note, to speed up the heating process, press and hold the red button to make the stove exit the melt mode. As the stove begins heating up the compound, it will cause the water to foam and bubble. Allow the water to boil up to the rim of the stove and then turn the stove off to allow the bubbles to recede. Once the bubbles have receded, turn the stove back on and repeat this process for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes have passed, turn off the stove and make sure to put on the heat protective gloves. Now, we will need to place an empty bus tub or pan underneath the drain to drain the water for disposal. Open the drain lever to allow the water to drain from the stove. Keep in mind, it may take multiple drains to fully empty the stove of water. Once all the water has been drained, replace the bus tub under the drain, close your drain lever, and then use a green scour or scrub brush and scrub off all carbon scoring you can reach. Once you have cleaned the stove walls and coils thoroughly, open the drain lever and use the water hose to rinse the stove of any debris or remaining boil out compound. Take a clean towel and dry up as much of the water as possible. After drying the stove, close the drain lever, add 2 cases of liquid shortening and 1 cube of solid shortening to the stove. Once the coils have been completely covered with shortening, turn it on so it can melt the shortening for its next use. Note, if a stove is turned on before the coils are completely covered with shortening, it can result in starting a fire. Please keep this in mind. And now you know how to boil out the Henny Penny style chicken stoves. As always, if you have any questions about these procedures, please ask your manager and refer to this training material.